Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Romania once again and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a couple of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last few years, a few different styles, and if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they are very solid all round. But like I've told you in previous Romanian reviews, the Romanian beer scene really is starting to kick off and they've got some very good stuff, and this brewery is one of two who have really kind of put their names out there across the European continent over the last little while. The beer itself is a style that I have tried from them before. I have actually tried this specific beer from the brewery before because we had cans of it at the pub that I work in, but I was lucky and managed to find a can over in Copenhagen so I could do a proper sit down review for you here on the channel. So needless to say, I'm excited to try this beer again. Hopefully it's as good as I remember. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and hopefully you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, like I say, we are going to go to Romania. We're going to go to a little place called Jilava, which is to the south of the capital, Bucharest, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Hop Hooligans. So this particular beer is called Matul, which basically means food beer in Danish, I guess we would say, probably Danish and potentially Norwegian. But this one, it comes in at 13% ABV, and it is a wild turkey barrel-aged barley wine. So yeah, needless to say, very excited to be able to do a proper sit-down review of this beer for you here on the channel. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what it's all about. Definitely nice to return to Hop Hooligans and to have a look at this beer for you here on the channel. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Hop Hooligans before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the future when we get the opportunity. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated, and remember that you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on the geography tagging system. Just go up to the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like in there. If I've reviewed beers from your local area, they should pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Romanian playlist along with a number of other beers, and we'll add to that in the future like I said. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a little bit about Hop Hooligans once again. So Hop Hooligans, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Jilava, which is to the south of Bucharest, the Romanian capital. Now, the company has been active since 2016, and they were founded by Christian Dinu and also Mircea Georgescu. So, the story of Hop Hooligans began when Cristi and Mircea teamed up with Petre Ion, the founder of Beer O'Clock, which was one of the first craft beer bars in Romania. But about a year after the launch of the brewery, Petre sadly died in a car accident in April of 2017. And after this, times proved to be very hard for the company, but thankfully they managed to persevere and they've since become very successful. But they built a reputation for themselves early on by brewing a variety of different styles and doing a lot of collaboration brews, and indeed these connections are what have helped Hop Hooligans get their beers out there across the European continent and be one of the first breweries from Romania to do so. These guys and Beretta are the two Romanian brewers that you're most likely to hear of first. But in 2018 they started canning their beers and so became the first Romanian brewery to do so, and the following year they partnered up with Beretta to organise Haze Fest, which was the first Romanian craft beer festival. In September of 2020 they opened up their own tap room in Bucharest, and they've been doing very well ever since, doing more collaborations, doing more recipes, and as of February 2023 when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 310 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. So yeah, like I say, a very well known Romanian brewery these days, doing some very nice beers in my experience, and it's always cool to try some new stuff from them here on the channel as well. So yeah, that's everything I can really tell you about Hop Hooligans for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just like to have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. So there you can see, you can see the Hop Hooligans symbol there, which is good. On top then you can see Matur, which like I say basically means like food beer in Danish and Norwegian. You can see around here you've got a guy who's obviously been very, very well fed. Funnily enough, the artwork on this one actually really reminds me of the artwork that my Japanese teacher uses in our classes when she's given us kind of demonstrations and things like that. But yeah, it actually tells you on the side here a little bit about the beer. So it says, it seems you always have some extra nails and bolts left each time you assemble new furniture, right? This means you're not following the instructions correctly. Don't just go skip to the last steps for your own safety. So yeah, it tells you a little bit about the malts and things that are in here as well. So the malt base in this one is extra pale, flaked oats, aromatic malt, crystal light, crystal T50, red rye crystal, and crystal extra dark. The hop is Chinook. So Chinook we know very, very well, an American hop with about 12% alpha acid, if I remember correctly. Gives you big piney resin. It can also give you some lovely kind of grapefruity character. And the yeast is WLP at number 2. But like we said, this one is a 13% barley wine aged in American Wild Turkey bourbon barrels. So yeah, I have tried this beer twice before. I think we tried it first in a staff meeting at Bishop's Arms and Gustav Adolfs Torg in Malmö, and then one of the customers bought it, and you know he's a regular, so he gave me like a little bit to taste once again because I recommended him this beer. This is probably one of my favourite barley wines I've ever had, actually. I will say that. So yeah, this is quite cool to be able to do this as a sit down review for you here on the channel. But yeah, as I say, Hop Hooligans Mato, 13% Wild Turkey bourbon barrel aged barley wine. Let's get stuck into this one. We'll get it out into the glass and see what it's all about. So yeah, I bought this beer at the Beer Hive in Amar in Copenhagen. Always a very good shop, actually. I'll try to remember to put the link to them in the video description below so you can check them out. I usually get most of my Danish things here, but they often get, you know, little random things like this, like a bit of Hop Hooligans or something else American. So yeah, it's always pretty cool to get some new beers from the guys over there. But yeah, anyway, this is pretty damn nice. So before the head disappears, because if I remember right, the head does disappear in this beer quite quickly, you can see that this one has poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say, kind of quite light beige head there. That is just fading away to be a nice kind of thin foamy layer in the middle of the beer, and there's just going to be a bit of a ring around the edge. But yeah, as you can see, the colour of this barley wine is pretty damn impressive. I mean, just look at that. This has got, it's a lovely, very kind of dark, very, very dark chestnut type colour in there. It's got a little bit of a red. It has got a little bit of a red tint to it, but yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, which has incidentally just faded away to be a few little wispy things. But yeah, it looks absolutely great. Now remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging you do or any adjuncts you put in will affect the colour of the beer as well. But yeah, in the case of this barley wine, I'm not sure how much the bourbon barrel is going to really affect the colour of it. I'm trying to think what the actual colour of Wild Turkey bourbon is. But yeah, with this one, I think most of the colour is probably down. It's probably a very long wort boil, this one, and it could potentially be like a double mash if I remember correctly. So yeah, colour of this beer, I have to say, it is absolutely beautiful. Lovely, lovely looking beer. So yeah, aroma-wise, well, flavour, aroma and flavour-wise, brain is not working. Appearance-wise is what I was looking for. This one is one of the darker barley wines I've come across. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation, one or two big bubbles down here, and then just a few kind of going up toward the bottom of or they're going up to the surface of the beer there. I don't think we need to say anything else about the aroma of this one, but it looks absolutely lovely, I have to say. So let's have a closer look at the aroma of this beer then and just see what it's all about. Oh yeah. This thing is a monster. It is an absolute monster, but I think that's why I enjoyed it so much before. So straight away with this beer, you can smell that bourbon. You can smell the bourbon barrel aging on this one, and it is absolutely lovely. But yeah, on top of all that, you've got everything you want from this style. You've got the big fruity notes in there. You've got the dry woody character, all of this kind of stuff. I mean, I really like how all of this goes together. So, yeah, aroma wise, I think this is very, very nice. Yeah. So on the yeah, for me the um yeah for me the the first thing that comes out of this one, and I could sit and smell this beer all day. The first thing that you get is that lovely smooth woody backbone from the bourbon. You can smell the smooth oaky character in there. There's a little bit of the as I say, pardon me. There's a little bit of you do get a little touch of the vanilla out of it, but then you can smell the bourbon in this one. And as I've always said in these videos, for me, American bourbon is a lot kind of sweeter than Scotch whiskey is. Scotch whiskey for me is a little bit more kind of grainy and things like that. But American, bourbon for me, I've tried a few bourbons, but I'm still not as big a fan of them as I am of Scotch whiskey, although of course I'm obviously biased in that sense. Although in fairness, I do like my Asian whiskies as well. Those are very, very good. But with this one, you can definitely smell the smooth. You can absolutely smell the smooth American oak in there. American oak is always a little bit smoother for me than European oak is. European oak's a bit drier. So you can smell the American oak in there, the little bit of vanilla, and you've also got the little bit of brown sugar from the bourbon on top of that, which smells very, very nice. And for me, it's quite an oily bourbon actually, going with that. So yeah, kind of interesting for sure. Above that though, you do have some lovely really lovely kind of cakey notes out of this one. So for me, there's a little touch of an almost rye bready character for this one, but then you've also got this kind of sweet, like brandy soaked bread note in there, and that's what I quite often find with barley wines, is that you'll get something like this. So yeah, above the kind of bourbon brown sugars, you've got that lovely kind of brandy soaked bread kind of thing. There's a little bit of a rye bready character in there, and you also have a little bit of that as we say, you've also got that little bit of there's just a little touch of like nutty character or something in there, which is nice. But it's a very deep and very oily beer, this one. Above that, you start to get all of the kind of brown sugars. So for me, there's a little bit of a leathery brown sugar, which is usually an indicator of a lengthy wort boil. So yeah, you've got that lovely kind of lengthy wort boil in there. So yeah, a little bit of a leathery kind of brown sugar for sure as well. On top of that, you've got a big kind of oily kind of sweet caramel, absolutely. And there's a little touch of a kind of almost biscuity character in there too. I don't really get so much in the way of treacle and molasses out of this one. It's actually more leathery brown sugar. But I think we'll get a wee bit more complexity out of it in the malt base, or when we actually taste the thing. Brain is not working today, guys, which has been quite a common thing recently. Been quite tired actually, too much work. So yeah, aroma wise, on the malty side of things and the yeasty side of things, this is lovely. Big oily leathery brown sugars, smooth yeah, kind of smooth woody sort of things from the barrel aging, some nice brown sugars in there. Yeah, it goes together very, very well actually. Yeah, I think aroma wise on the malty side of things, it's right up my street. I love these big brown sugary beers, as you guys will know if you've watched the channel for any length of time. But yeah, on top of that though, we've got the hoppy component to look at, and I don't know how long this was actually aged for. That's one of the things. I think it was at least a year. But yeah, with this one, there is still a little bit of the hoppy character present in here. You can smell a little bit of the earthiness. There's a little bit of a kind of floral, there's a little bit of herbal character in there as well. But Chinook, obviously, for the most part, is going to give you a big kind of piney resinous character. And you do get a little bit of that in this one. You can smell a wee touch of the piney resin just lingering there. and there's a bit of grassiness at the front of the nose. But yeah, the hoppy character has dropped out of this one quite a bit. Obviously, you can keep this beer and age it a little bit more, but yeah, that is one of the things to remember with these. That is definitely one of the things to remember with these. But with these kind of barley wine beers, the hoppy character will progressively drop out of them as time goes on. But yeah, it's nice. On the fruity side of things, then this beer is very nice too. There's a lot of big kind of oily plum in there, which is something you'd expect from the style. You've also got you've got a little bit of raisin, you've got the oily plum, you've got the prunes and dates in there. So you've got a mix of the kind of more bright red, kind of bright berry red fruits, whatever you want to call them, and also the more dry things. So like I say, a little bit of raisin, a little bit of plum, wee bit of prune and date, like I said. And there's also like a little bit of a figgy character to this one, but you've got black currant in there. I don't get too much in the way of blackberry, which you often get. But yeah, for me, it's big, oily, fruity characters, this one, with a bit of a kind of drier fruit backbone. So yeah, aroma-wise, this is very, very nice. Yeah, in terms of the aroma, I think that's, to be honest, everything that we really need to say. So yeah, nothing else to do but to actually dig into this beer and see what it's all about once again. So yeah, this one is the Max Öl, 13% Wild Turkey Bourbon Barley's barley wine from Hop Hooligans in Jilava near Bucharest in Romania. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah. This is quite nice, actually, I have to say. I can see exactly why I enjoyed this one. So, yeah. It's actually, the funny thing about this when I think about it, this is a lot sweeter and a bit less leathery than I remember it being. And it's got a wee bit more dryness to it as well. It's kind of interesting this when you try different beers at different times. You know, if you try a beer more than once, it can always feel a little bit different. You have to remember this, that your palate is constantly evolving. So yeah, the way that this goes together is very, very nice. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. As I say, Hop Hooligans, very solid with pretty much everything they try. They always do it very, very well. And for me, the quality of this beer is up there. This is one of my favourite barley wines I've ever had, actually. So yeah, this is very damn good. I mean, Paragon. There is, the Paragon from Lervigate Brewery. What's the one from Balladine in Italy? Shaju or something it's called. Those two are awesome, and this one is kind of pushing up to that sort of level as well, in my opinion. This is very, very good. What I would say is that it'd be a shame if they only did this once. If they only do it once, that's a bit of a shame, but they've obviously got a solid base barley wine in here. It'd be cool to see them do this one with like a cognac barrel or something like that. That would be interesting. But like I say, lovely, lovely beer, this one. Let's try and break this down though and just describe it for you a wee bit more in depth, as we always do. So yeah, I remember, yeah, it's doing what I remember it doing, as well as, the thing is, when you take this one in, when your mouth adjusts to it, it really sweetens up this beer. It really, really does kind of sweeten up a little bit. So I like that about this for sure. Yeah. So on the malty side of things, then we'll go to the middle third of the palate, as we always do. Backbone of the beer, you've got a little bit of that kind of smooth, woody backbone to this one. So yeah, smooth American oak in there, as we said. For me, American oak is always a little bit smoother than the drier American oak. So smooth, yeah, smooth American oak. As you move further forward toward the middle of that to the front of that middle third of your palate, sorry, you do get a little touch of vanilla out of this one, and then above the smooth oak, you've got the bourbon brown sugars, and for me, it's actually a little bit more, the bourbon brown sugar you get out of this one, it feels a little bit more almost like aromatic or something. Like I say, it's quite a sweet and almost kind of toasty bourbon, I find. Now let's just have another wee look at that. See, I'm not too well versed in like I say, I'm not too well versed in American bourbons right enough, but for me, the bourbon brown sugars that are in here have a little bit of a toasty character to them, and as I say, they just feel a little bit aromatic. So yeah, the base layer of that beer is a lovely smooth American oaky wood, a little bit of vanilla further forward, then the bourbon brown sugars on top of it. Above that, above all of that, you have a little bit more of a above all of that, you have a wee bit more of a pardon me, you have a wee bit more of a, say, kind of like I was talking about, you have this sort of cakey layer. So for me, there's a bready layer there, but it feels like a slightly more home. It almost feels maybe there's a little bit of touch of rye bread in there. There is a little touch of that rye bready layer. Then you have a wee bit of you've got a brandy soaked bread, which is very, very nice. It really feels like that. So you've got a rye bready layer, then a kind of sweeter wholemeal bread that feels like it's been soaked in brandy, something like that. And within that brandy soaked bread layer, toward the front of that, you get a little bit more of a kind of nutty character as well. I would say that for sure. And that layer, of course, that sits there and that sweetens up the further into the aftertaste you go, which is one of the really interesting things about this beer for me. So yeah, cover the kind of bready layer. Above that, you start to get the brown sugary notes out of the beer. So above the kind of brown bready character, you've got a more, you can feel that sort of leathery brown sugary layer, but the leatheriness that you get out of this one actually has a little bit of toastiness and a wee bit of dryness to it, which I find quite interesting. So for me, again, I really do like how that goes together. Yeah, so the how would we say, it's very late. The brown sugars in this one, this is what really got me about this beer, is how they evolve, and this beer really does kind of sweeten up. So with the brown sugars, as I say, you've got a layer of leatheriness there. It's also got a wee touch of toastiness to it. And it's almost like a big kind of long oval that you have in the middle of your palate. So like I say, leathery, yeah, you've got a bit of a leathery base layer in there. It's got a little bit of toasty character to it. Above all of that, you've got a wee touch of, you do have a little bit of a sweeter, you've got a bit of a kind of treacly molasses note in there. Then you've got the sweeter caramel kind of sitting underneath that. So if we go from the dead centre of your palate, you've got the treacle molasses, then a sweeter caramel layer, then you've got the kind of toasty caramel notes, and then you've got that big leathery layer with this one. And as I said earlier, the leathery layer of brown sugar that you get in these beers tends to be because of the length of the wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. So in a lot of ways, this beer, it doesn't do anything kind of surprising, if that makes sense, but it just does it very, very well. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, flavour wise, this beer I think is really quite nice. So yeah, it gets a big thumbs up from me in that sense. I think that's everything we need to say about the middle third of the palate then. So let's go to the back third of the palate. The border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of bready build up there once again. And I do really like how that goes together. So above that, you get, as I say, above all of that, or behind that, you get the woody layers. The layers on the back third of the palette are very similar to the middle third of the palette, of course, they kind of get taller and things. But as I've always said, the further back on the palette you go, the kind of more dry and bitter the flavour gets, the further forward you come, the sweeter it gets. So you've got the woody layer in there, which again feels a little bit drier. You've got the bourbon brown sugars in there, which feel a little bit more toasty and a little bit more dry, I would say. Above all of that, you've got a little bit of a kind of slightly taller rye bready layer, more graininess. Then you've got a taller layer of the kind of brandy soaked wholemeal bread that I was talking about. Then above all of that, you've maybe just got a little bit of a kind of more bread crusty layer, which is quite interesting. Then above everything else, there's a little touch of yeasty character in there. It's like a very light, slightly farmhousey, sweet brown bread with a bit of honeycomb. I always get honeycomb in the back third of the palette for some reason, especially with these bigger malty beers. But yeah, that's the back third of the palette in this one, so you can feel the flavour is definitely taller on the back third, and then as you come further forward into the middle, it just squashes down and kind of condenses together. So yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is very, very nice, so it gets a big thumbs up from me. On the hoppy side of things then, so back corners of the palette, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, the beer's got a little touch of herbal character. And as I said earlier, like with barley wines and stuff, a lot of the hoppy character will kind of drop out of the beer as time goes on, but you can still feel a little bit of the piney note in this one just lingering there. There is still a good little bit of hoppy character lingering in this beer. So yeah, good little bit of pine resin just pushing its way out of this beer. And that's from the Chinook. That's one of the inherent characteristics of Chinook. You get a little bit of pine resin there, and you can feel there's a little bit of floral spice on the front corners of your palate, but around the front curve of your tongue, it's a bit lighter and more grassy, which I do quite enjoy as well. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the hoppy side of the beer. Not overly bitter, but you do get a little bit of that out of this one. So yeah, front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of things. The border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of that bready build up in there. It's like a brandy soaked wholemeal brown bread. The base of that front third of your palate, it's got a wee touch of the woody character in there, which is a bit smoother and a bit sweeter. Then you've got the sweeter side of the bourbon brown sugars in there as well, and then a little bit of that kind of brandy soaked bread. Above all of that though, you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So I do like how that goes together. Yeah, fruity side of things in this beer really is quite nice actually. Yeah, I love the fruity side of this beer, I do have to say that. So at the back of that front third of your palate, you've got a lovely little bit of raisiny character in there. In fact, I don't know if I'd even say it's as sharp as raisins. There's a little bit of plum for sure. Then underneath that, you've got the dry prunes, you've got a bit of date, and then you've got the sultanas, the dry white green grapey character coming out of the beer. So absolutely that. On the back half of the front third of your palate, that's what it's all about. As you move further forward though, you start to get more and more red fruity characters out of it. So yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, so say you've got the sultanas, the dates and things in there, and as you move further forward, you can feel there's like a slightly oily peary character in there, but as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, you get a little bit more of a kind of figgy note in there. Then you get the black currant in the front half of that front third of your palate. You get a more kind of juicy black currant in the base, then a more oily kind of black berry the further into the aftertaste you go. You do have a slight element of kind of phenolic quality to this beer as well, the cough syrupy medicinal type thing, and yeah, that kind of lingers into the aftertaste as well. So I really do like how that pieces together in this one. The fruity side of this beer is nice, and the big bready characters it has is also something that really attracts me to it as well. But like I say, it's got a wee bit more dryness and graininess to it than I remember. I remember it being very, very sweet the first time I tried it, but then I think we also tried a couple of other beers at that time too. So you have to remember everything can affect your palate. That's just kind of how it goes. But yeah, flavour-wise, this beer is really, really nice. A very kind of old school, big, oily and smooth American barley wine. It's a big, big thumbs up for me. Potentially the best beer that I've had from Hop Hooligans, but that's not to take anything away from any of the other beers. They're all very, very good, but this is just the one I remember striking me the most. But a lovely big, yeah, just chewy, leathery barley wine. It gives you everything you want from the style, and the wild turkey barrel aging on this is quite interesting too. You don't often see beers specifically advertised as wild turkey bourbon barrel aged. So yeah, I like this. This is worth trying. Absolutely, one of my favourite barley wines I've had. So yeah, I think we can round off this review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, mouthfeel wise, for me, this beer, it's full-bodied for sure. It's maybe at the bottom end of full-bodied, pushing toward the middle side of full-bodied. Carbonation is very, very smooth. It's a big, kind of thick, silky, oily thing, this beer. Don't think there's any doubt in my mind about that. But like I say, very smooth and very, very sweet. So on the, yeah, I think overall, in terms of IBUs, I think this beer does have a good little bit of IBU to it. I think maybe about 60, 70 IBUs. I do actually get quite a little bit of bitterness out of this beer the further into the aftertaste you go. Obviously, the longer time that you age this beer, the less IBU you'll get out of it. But you have to remember the barley wine is basically the big brother of the double IPA. So yeah, these beers can be quite bitter. But the malt base, as we said, it's got a bit of dryness to it. It's got a little bit of smoothness in there as well. You've also got a lot of sweetness to this one, both from the bourbon sugars and from the malt base itself. And yeah, it goes together really, really nicely. In that the malt base in this beer, I think, is just very, very well done, and the wild turkey bourbon barrels just complement it very, very well. Yeah, we've talked about the hops, the fruity side of this beer, really nicely balanced between the more kind of, it leans a little bit more toward the kind of drier fruits, the dates, the prunes, sultanas and things, but then yeah, you've got a lot of red fruity character to this beer as well. So yeah, the way everything goes together in this one for me is just lovely. As I say, probably my favourite beer I've had from Hop Hooligans so far. And yeah, I look forward to trying more different styles from these guys. I maybe need to look a little bit more at the big malty things, because I've been very impressed with the imperial stouts and barley wines. So it'd be cool to see these guys do like a Belgian quadruple or something like that. We'll need to keep an eye on what they're doing going forward. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. So this one was the Matul, the food beer, I guess we would translate the name as, from Hop Hooligans in Jilava, just to the south of Bucharest in Romania. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Hop Hooligans, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until the next time, Sláinte, Skål, cheers, check out my social media, check out Hop Hooligans social media, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Sláinte, Skål, cheers, try this beer, it's pretty damn awesome. Catch you guys in the next one.